So grew up in a home where food was very rare to find. And so at the age of 4, I began to realize that my father was different from any other father. My father was very abusive, mean, not just to me, but to my mother as well. You watch your mom being beaten every other day, and there's nothing you can do. That was really tough. The abuse went on and on. You know, it didn't stop a day, it didn't stop a week. You know, sometimes he would say that, you know, that I wish I was dead and he came home and he didn't have to see me breathe. At this point, I knew my dad, at some point, he's gonna end my life. One day I woke up in the morning and I went to the bus station and I said, hey, I wanna go somewhere, but of all these buses that are here, which one goes the farthest? When we go to Kampala, they said, everyone out, you know, I got out. You know, I'd never been in the city. There were people, commotion, so I got a little confused, like, what am I gonna do? As soon as I got here, you know, there was no plan. How do I get food? How do I get water? Where am I gonna sleep? But quickly, I realized that I can just stay there. I didn't have to run away. So I can just do whatever was needed to survive. And so I became a street boy. Back at home, you know, you thought, do I have tomorrow? On the streets, it was, do I have the next hour? Because life was really, really fast, and some kids died on the streets. I went to sleep under the bridge, smelling. You know, someone peed on me. I'm just treated as garbage. Those are the lies that you get to really believe. You begin to believe, yeah, it's true, I'm garbage. It's true. What my dad said, that I will never be good for anything. Yeah, I'm a street boy, there's nothing I've done for myself. So you begin to believe those lies. I lived or worked or survived at a place where people always came to buy produce. Most people who had small shops would come and buy things from there. For those who are buying things, we help them carry their stuff to their car. One day, I think I'd been on the street for about 3.5 years. During that time, one family came to buy produce. They were kind and they gave me something to eat. This time, they didn't give me the opportunity to take it myself. Well, the next week, I saw them again. Every time this family came, the other street kids were like, then I would know, hey, my people are around. So then I would go help them. So it was maybe 6 months into it. They said, hey, what's your name? I said, my name is Peter. And they said, hey, if you have an opportunity to go to school, would you go to school? I said, what? Truly that day is a day that my life changed. This man was the head of Compassion International Uganda. That gave me the opportunity to be part of the program because he said, I will be his sponsor. I will take care of everything you need. The pastor came to me and said, now it's soccer time. At this point, I really still had issue with trust. I just stayed there. He comes back 20 minutes later and said, hey, Peter, I asked you to play soccer. Why didn't you go? I said, I know you want to punish me. Because in my head, I was really thinking what my dad would have done. He said, Peter, look, you have a potential that God has given you. And it's our job to see that potential fulfilled. My sponsor who had picked me off the street, he valued me. So he had helped me to value myself. But the potential side, I had not got it yet until this pastor said those words. To this day, to me, those were the kindest words from a stranger. And that truly, truly began to change the transformation in my heart, in my life, and also how I viewed what future was for me. My father, every word he said to me was always, you're good for nothing. You don't matter. that I'm nobody. You're a street kid. You're nothing. You're nobody. You don't matter. You don't dream there's tomorrow for you. Absolutely no. But in the midst of that, for someone to see in you as a little boy and say, you're worthy taking to school. That's what changed my life. That's it. I was fortunate that I got to be that child that got to be rescued from poverty. But I know there are millions out there that are truly looking for one person to say, you're worthy, you're important. That's what my sponsor did. He didn't take all of them, but he looked to one, and that one happened to be me.
About a year and a half ago, I went on a compassion trip, and it was astonishing. My brother, you'll meet him in a moment, my brother has been involved with compassion for 8 years-ish, as a volunteer.
Sponsor for
even
20.
Longer. And he's been pushing me for a long time. We need to be involved. You should be involved with compassion, and bounce the idea. How about I come down and we could do a presentation? We could do it together. It'd be fun. And from my side, one of the things that's hard or strange about being a pastor of a church like this is about every week somebody calls and says, hey, we got a ministry you should be involved with. And there's a lot of good ministries. And it wasn't that I thought compassion was bad or unworthy of our time. It's just there were so many, and I wasn't sure how to decide. But a year and a half ago, a Presbyterian pastor in the area said, hey, he was in Hawaii, but he's part of our network. And he said, I'm putting together a trip to El Salvador with compassion, and I want to invite you to come along. And it won't cost you a penny. It's about 5 days, I think. And I'd love to have you come and see what compassion is doing in a country. And I looked at the list of the people that are going, and about half of the list I knew as really great buddies of mine. And I knew my brother had said compassion's outstanding, and it was free. And I thought, I'm going to go. This will be an outstanding trip. Well, I came away from that trip absolutely overwhelmed with this organization. I have never ever seen an organization as well run and as well grounded and as perfectly focused as this organization. And it blew me away what I saw. And even saying that feels like there's got to be a better word, a bigger word than awestruck and amazed and overwhelmed. But I wanted you to catch a glimpse of it, and in the belief that this is not only a way to change a child's life, I believe, and I've experienced it, Linda and I have, to touch our lives, to start a transformation in our lives. And there is such a good in this that I wanted to share it with you. Now, you know all the denominational stuff we've gone through for a while. It put this on the back burner, in all honesty. So it's been a year and a half since that great trip. But in the back of my mind, I've been mulling and pondering. And then when the time came and we finished all the big stuff of transferring to ECO, we started the work of, we need to do this. This will be good. And I wanted Peter to come. I'd met him in El Salvador, and I wanted him to come. And he travels 400 to 500,000 miles a year, going to church after church, country after country, just spreading the news of this. So it was hard to get him to hear. We scheduled it way out, 7 months out, and today is the day to have him come. And with him, as we planned years ago, my brother Michael. Peter, come on up. Michael, come on up. And two good guys. Now, I did tell you all last week that Michael doesn't remember our growing up years quite as accurately as I do, and since the accident, anyway, truly we are here. We want to tell you a little bit about compassion and just let you know what an amazing organization is. We're just going to do it together. We're going to do it a little informal, but we want you to hear this good story. I'm going to give you the wand, bro.
All right, I'm up, huh? Mark's dementia seems to be kicking in a little bit. I wanted to get some things straight. I've listened to some sermons over the years. Occasionally, I just want to make sure he's not telling you too many lies. And I keep hearing this thing about the Dodgers over and over. And now we grew up in San Francisco Bay Area in a time when Willie Mays and Willie McCovey and all these greats are playing. It's hard for you to see. Here we are outside of Candlestick Park and Mark with his LA Dodgers hat on. Sometimes we deny the things that are really most important to us. This is Techape is a word, a term that's used in Haiti. And Haiti is very important to me. My beautiful daughter is from Haiti. And when I first got involved with Compassion, I had no idea how it would reshape my life. And Daniela certainly wouldn't be part of my life had it not been for the ministry of Compassion. Techape is a term that's used for children under 5 in Haiti who so often die before their 5th birthday. And so in many communities, children aren't named until their 5th birthday. And Techape means my little escapee. And it means up until this point, this child has escaped death. And that breaks my heart. Oops, I gotta go backwards. There we go. So when you think of the word poverty, I want you to just come up with one word quickly as you can that you think of as the opposite of poverty, and just hold on to it. And we're going to get back to that in just a minute. My family first got involved with Compassion nearly 20 years ago. We started sponsoring a couple of children. In my former career, I was a graphic artist for 13 years, freelance, and we had a mortgage. And as you can imagine, getting a mortgage approved on a freelance graphic artist salary is kind of a bit of a challenge. And when we got the bills all paid, we always felt like we'd like to be giving at our church, but we weren't doing it because we didn't know what next month was going to look like. And we went to a concert and we saw Michael W. Smith talking about Compassion International. And we thought, well, this would maybe be a good way we could start giving and have it something that we make a commitment to do every month. And we'll make sure we take care of it just like a bill, and then we'll make sure we can get by on whatever is left over. And so it's not profoundly deep. We didn't look into Compassion. We really had no idea except that Michael W. Smith says it's good, so it must be pretty good. And I'm embarrassed to say that's the extent of our investigation of Compassion. But that's how we got into this ministry. The picture on the screen is the first child we sponsored, Freddie, and she lives in the Dominican Republic. And she was 6 years old in that photo, and she was living with her grandmother and grandfather. Her mother and father were not married. They both had separate jobs 5 hours away in the capital city of Santo Domingo. And they would work doing whatever they were able to do and send money when they could to help take care of her. But her grandmother and grandfather cared for her mostly. So over the years, we'd write 3 or 4 letters a year. Mostly I was the letter writer, and I'd write to her. And then one of my coworkers, by then I was a firefighter in Seattle, and one of my coworkers died in a climbing accident. And he and I were very close, and his family and I were very close. It was devastating to me. And I threw myself into taking care of his family and his wife for the next many months. On the same day that John died on Mount Rainier, I got a letter from my sponsored child, Freddie, and it said that her father had died in a motorcycle accident. And I thought, I really need to write to her and tell her how sorry I am. Months went by. I get another letter from her, and the next letter said, please pray for my grandfather. He's sick and he's going to have an operation. And I thought, gosh, I really need to write to her. Next letter said, grandfather died. And Christmas came. Every child in Compassion's program gets a Christmas gift, whether the sponsor helps with it or not. The child gets a gift. So in February, the following February, we got a letter, and it said, I wanted to thank you. I'll never forget the letter. It says, I wanted to thank you for the Christmas gift that you sent. But I want you to know that I'm sad because this last year I lost my father, and then I lost my grandfather, and now I've lost you because you won't write to me anymore. It hit me hard, and so I talked to my wife that day, and I said, I wonder if there is a way to go visit our sponsored child. And I went on to Compassion's website, and I told my wife I've seen videos where Michael W. Smith has gone to visit his sponsored child. And she said, yeah, that's great. You know you're not Michael W. Smith, right? And
you do, right?
Yeah. Well, now I do. She likes to keep me humble. And I went up and I looked on the computer, and then I came back and said, in your face, we can go. And they have a thing called a sponsor tour, and you can go visit your child. So we didn't know how we were going to pay for it exactly at that point, but we wrote her a letter, and we said, we love you, and we're sorry, and we will never forget you, and we're going to come visit you. And when I went and visited with my wife, I'm sorry, I've gotten ahead of myself. The opposite of poverty is enough. And the word I would normally think of is wealth. The opposite of poverty is wealth, and it's not. It's enough. And that's what Compassion's mission is to just provide enough so these children have hope for a better life. So I'm sorry I jumped through that. But here we are, meeting Freddie for the first time. And now at this point, she's 15 years old. And we had been her sponsor for 9 years. And it was a wonderful moment. We spent an entire day with her and learned all about her life and the things that she struggled with, and prayed with her. And it was aside from my children being born and marrying my wife, it was right up there with the best days of my life. And this is the community where she lives. And sometimes we look at these child packets and they're wearing a nice dress because Compassion wants to maintain the dignity of these children. Every moment of their lives we want to make sure we maintain their dignity. But the reality is they're living next to raw sewage and garbage. But they go to the Compassion Development Center and they're loved. A real brief history about Compassion. In 1952, an Army chaplain named Everett Swanson was in South Korea. And he was walking along holding his overcoat, and a little boy ran up and grabbed it and ran. And he was going to go get that jacket, and he chased after this little boy and eventually found him hiding in the streets of Seoul under a bunch of cardboard boxes. And he came back to that place the next morning, and he realized that these cardboard boxes were the only protection these children had. And the Korean government would come by in the morning before the sun would come up, and the streets were frozen, and they'd get out of these garbage trucks and kick the boxes. And when there was a child that didn't move, it was put in the garbage truck so that when the sun came up, people didn't have to deal with it. And it broke his heart. And so he went out and went back to the United States and just sought out donations so that he could start what has now become Compassion. And this is me saying goodbye to you, Freddie, in 2010, when she left the program, and she's no longer part of Compassion. She's grown up, and she's doing great. Sorry, the clicker is, now it jumped twice.
One back. That's the last one.
All right. Anyway, since then, I have learned what an amazing ministry it is. It's just, it's what I do now on my days off, and it's what I hope to do for the rest of my life. I saw the love that the compassion staff gives to the poor and the children. And when you stand there and you see these children living in such difficult situation, it's just impossible not to care about them. So,
here, I'll take that. Thank you. Peter, I met in Costa Rica or El Salvador, and he told his story down there, a little bit that you heard in the video. And so when we talked about doing a Compassion Sunday, I wanted you to hear his story because it comes from the perspective of a child being changed by it. There's a story of a sponsor being changed by compassion, but I wanted you to hear a powerful story of a child being changed. Peter, welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you. Well, I'm really blessed to be here. I don't speak English quite well, so I would beg you to stay with me. I usually say, if I say anything rude, you can throw your iPhone 5 at me, and I promise I'll take you to Africa with me. Well, I'm blessed to be here on behalf of the children in Africa and Asia. We truly thank you for giving us an opportunity to tell our stories. In many places, in many ways, we are never heard, or people never really get to hear what we go through, our children in developing countries. So on behalf of the children, we thank your pastor and we thank your church for saying that we truly, truly matter, and that's why I'm here. Well, you saw a little glimpse of my story on the video, but truly life was miserable, but also life is still miserable. For me, I've crossed that line, so today I'm speaking on behalf of the children from El Salvador who are still in the same place probably I was many years ago. So today, it's not about me, it's about really what changed for me, but what can change for the other children as well. You know, grew up in a home where poverty was all we knew. No one ever told me to dream. No one ever told me to be anything. And actually, my last name is Javier Mana, a gift given to us by God. And how I got that name was because I didn't have a name until when I was 2 years old. And the reason was my mom was afraid that I would die before the age of 2. So she said, well, I don't want to get attached to this child until I know for sure that they will be okay. And so at 2, she said, he is a gift given to us by God. So that's what my name means. And the reason was for every 100 children were born, 50 would die before the age of 2. So most moms did not want to be attached to the children because they weren't sure that they will survive. And so that was my mom. Well, at the age of 4, I began to realize that not only were we just poor, but my life, my dad was very, very different. Abusive in every shape, form. So on one hand, you didn't have a meal. To be honest, I grew up in a home where I had one meal every other day. And my meal was beans and potatoes. Having beans and potato, that was a good day. The only 2 days we had a different meal was Christmas. So Christmas we had chicken. So for me, I grew up knowing Christmas was about chicken. As a kid, it was the only time you had a different meal. And then Easter, I had beef. I come from a Roman Catholic family, so at the end of Lent, we would have at least beef. But also, I come from a country where it's men eat first, women, and children last. So even that chicken, that beef did not get to us. More time, you got soup because you're a child and you ate last. And so that is a place where I come from. And so for me, for anyone to say, one day I'll be 10 years old, it's not like it was strange, but really, how do you believe it? When your mom has to beat everyone at home every day, when you can barely have a meal, how does someone tell you that one day you'll be 10 years old? No. But for me, I didn't even want to believe it because I knew I would rather die now, or I wish my life ended now, rather than wait until then. And so that was life for me. At the age of 8, I got an opportunity to go to school. And I went to school because my mom wanted me to learn how to spell my last name. My last name is this long. And so she said, if there's one thing I can give to my son, is maybe he can learn how to spell his name. So that's how I went to school, and I loved it. Not because I want to be a teacher, not because I want to be anything. I loved it. Why? Because it was the only time I could be a little boy where I didn't have to be abused every moment by my father. So school for me was safe haven. But, well, when you came home, the abuse went on. At the age of 11, that's when I ran away. I couldn't take the abuse anymore. And so I ran away. And I ended up in Kampala. I'd never been 10 miles away, and I went 500 kilometers away from my home. And as you saw, I became a street kid. And on the streets, that's how I met a stranger who said, hey, as a little boy, I want to make a difference in your life. For me, no one had ever seen me as a human being. From my mom, from my dad, from the street life, no one ever saw me as a human being. And so for this man to come and say, hey, you have a potential, I would like to take you to school, that's what changed my life. It wasn't so much of where he took me. It wasn't so much of, it was more about that for the first time, someone saw me as a little boy, yes, dirty, yes, a thief, but truly a little boy, he could make a difference. And that's how he truly made a difference. That I went to school and I did well. That I went to school, I began to dream. You know, I had never been told I could be 10, but now I began to think, well, I could be 25 at some point. But if I'll be at 25, what should I do now to help me survive there? School, be a good kid, and that's truly what changed my life. And not only did he just change my life, but he changed my family as well. My mom became a believer as well. Not because I went back and I said, Mom, I got to know Christ through the church. No, my mom said, how can a stranger love my child as their own? How? What compelled them to? And knowing that he went to a Baptist church, my mom said, I'll go to any Baptist church in my village. And that's how she came to know the Lord, for sure. All my siblings have gone through university. We've all, I've been in school more than anyone I know. But all my siblings, too, are university students. Why? Not because they could make it or they had the potential, but for them, they said, if Peter can do it, we can do it as well. But also for me, once he gave me that opportunity to go to school and do well, I thought, what can I give to my siblings to do the same? Put them in school and help them, because I knew that God will change them for sure. So for me today, that's why I'm here for the children of El Salvador, saying that thank you for loving them. But also that when you take them home, when you give them that opportunity to change themselves, that truly their families will change. But truly their mom and dad will change. That truly the one blessing of one would truly go beyond you could ever imagine. And that was for me. I don't think when he sponsored me, he knew I would ever go to university. I don't think he ever knew that I would travel over the world. But for him, he said, what I cannot do for everybody, I would do it for one. And that's what he did for me. And so today, that's what I'm here, truly, to share my story. That what you can do for the children of El Salvador, you could do it for the entire nation of El Salvador. So on behalf of the children, we truly want to thank you for saying that we matter.
Amen. Thanks, Peter. Good word. Peter said repeatedly El Salvador, and we've picked El Salvador to be the country that we're working with for a number of reasons. I'll go through it. It's where I went, so I saw it. I know what's going on there. I met the people there. We have a connection already. But the other thing is, and we'll explain this a little bit more in just a moment, but one of the hopes is that this isn't a ministry that we do by just writing a check once a month and you forget. Like we've done. We've done the same thing with Delmy, that months go by without sending her a letter. And thankfully we hadn't had any heartbreaking ones like that. But there's still the sense of we're in this not to just send a check to Compassion, but to care for that one child and to make a difference in her life and the life of her family. And so by going to El Salvador, one of the beauties is it's pretty cheap to go down there. It's pretty easy. LAX has multiple direct flights. And the dream of this is that there'd be some of us in this church that would sponsor children from El Salvador. And once a year, whoever wants, whoever is able, is we go down there and see our kids. And we pat them on the back and we give them love and we minister to them. We love them and we watch what God is doing in their lives. And not only find that their lives are changed, but we come back changed. Because as a pastor of a church, I'm really concerned and care deeply, as you do, I believe, for the kids of El Salvador or Uganda. But I also care for you. And I want you to come alive. And I think this is a tool not only to change a child, but to change the child caregiver and change us all. Well, I went down to El Salvador, as I said, and it was really a fun trip with a lot of good buddies, but it was other things that just grabbed me more than anything else. I just saw the organization of this group. Let's see how this works. There we go. This amazing group of people. You see this lady's holding a notebook, and this is one of the things that just stunned me. We'd go to these different projects, Compassion Project, and it's very important to understand that Compassion Projects, one of the things that's essential to Compassion is they're church-centered. They don't come in and replace the church. They don't come in and work outside of the church. They find a church that's healthy and alive, and they partner with it. And they work side by side with it. And so we'd come to these churches, and there'd be 100, 200, 300 kids just running around. Some were in school, some were in training to learn cottage industries, how to sew, so that they could get a sewing machine and run a little business. And one of the things that's very important for compassion, and we saw it in all the centers, is health care. Are the children healthy? Are they okay? And what you can see on the far left is a woman holding a notebook, and every child in every center has a binder or a notebook filled with the facts of their life. From the moment they come in, what did they weigh? What's their home situation? How many parents? Do they have parents? Are they living with a grandparent? What's the detail of their home life? Their health is checked rigorously, and you can see on the far right that there's growth, typical pediatric growth charts. And we would go to these projects, 200, 300, 400 kids, and every one of them had a notebook for every single kid that was there. And every one of them was filled out, and you could ask any name, how is this child doing? And they could tell you what their home was like, when their home was last visited by a compassion person, what they're in need of, what the health of the child is. It was stunning. And when you start thinking that they have right now 1.5 million children that they're caring for. There are 1.5 million of these notebooks filled with details of a child's life. One child's life, one child for each notebook. And they're showing we care. We know what they're eating. We know where they're living. We know how they're doing in school. We actually get a report that Delmi's doing fair in school. And we can encourage her and say, keep being a good student. Compassion's amazing. When I went down there, I wasn't a sponsor, in spite of Michael for a lot of years saying you should sponsor a child. And Linda, you know how it is. We all feel the same way. Yeah, we should. I mean, we all feel that way. And the last thing we want to put on you is a guilt trip and say, if you're really Christian, you would do this. So we don't want to do this. You guys give a lot. You do a lot. You serve a lot. That's not the purpose. And Linda and I are in the same boat. And so when we were thinking about this and started the planning for the trip, Compassion made it clear, it'd be good if you want to sponsor a child, but there's certainly no obligation. Linda and I talked and said we really should. But it was getting ready to go to Africa as well, and the plans for going on a medical trip to Africa was huge, and the months before, we just never got around to it. So when I went down to El Salvador, we still had not sponsored a child. And one of the fun things that they did when we got on the bus is they had those packets, just like this, a little thing, and you can see these out on the table. And they said, if you want to sponsor a child, here they are, and they handed a stack of 20 or 30, and I thought, I need to do it. And I called Linda and said, you good with it? I mean, should we dive in on this? And I just flipped through, and I just found a girl that I just kept coming back to her, and she just grabbed my heart, little Delmi. And because we were in El Salvador and we were all there together, what it allowed to do is they said, if you choose a child on this trip, if you don't have one, or even if you do have one that's in Uganda or somewhere else in the world, and you'd like to sponsor a child in El Salvador, we will do our best to have you meet him or her on this trip. And so they did. They set it up so that I could meet little Delmi. And it was just a kick. She was one cute little 5-year-old. Let's see if this will come on. One cute little 5-year-old. She had the SpongeBob pajamas, which reminded me of yours growing up, Mike. Yeah. And in the bottom picture, she's introducing me to her grandmother. And there we're together on the far left. I'm standing with her and her grandmother. And it was precious. And everywhere I went, she just held my hand. And now she writes us letters, and we write her letters. And Linda and I, we don't do much, but we write her and tell her what Peter said is, and it's not just money. In fact, one of the fun things that we learned, we met a child from El Salvador who had grown. It was in the college leadership program. And she said, I had writing letters to my sponsor for 10 years, and I didn't know that she gave money. I thought she was just my friend. And the wild thing about this is that you really are diving into writing letters to a child, and like Peter, what you heard is saying, you're important. You don't have to stay impoverished. You can be something different because God loves you, and you are precious, and your setting and your reality is not permanent, and I'm here to help you in any way I can, and compassion will help you, and so study hard, and I'm praying for you. That's maybe the most important thing is Jesus loves you, and he has a plan, and trust him. And so Delmi, it was great fun to meet Delmi and to be a part of her life and get to know her. As Peter mentioned again, we're looking at El Salvador. All the focus will be on El Salvador for us. And the reason, again, is because it's so focused and so easy to get to. And we'll be able to go to set projects. And again, I hope that we'll be able to go every year and take a group of us down there. And maybe the next year there'll be a couple more sponsors of kids, and we'll go down and see your kids. And you might go down for the 5th year in a row to see your child that you sponsor. But it's so easy to go to El Salvador. It's so well run and so efficient. It makes it something that we can join in very simply. When I started ministry, like most of us, I know Kent did this, and like most of us that are pastors, we start in youth ministry. And I was the junior leader for a number of years, first with Young Life and then working in a church. And then eventually, when I went to college, I became the leader of a junior high ministry program. And that first year, it didn't go very well. And I had 10 really good college students. They were really, really good people, and they were gung-ho. They were ready to work with junior high kids. And I pointed them to the junior high school, and I said, let's make a difference. And they basically spent almost the whole year trying to figure out how you do that. They were uncomfortable at a junior high school. They didn't know how to get into a junior high school. They didn't know how to start relationships with junior high students. It just didn't work. And so that summer, I thought, I got to do something different. I got to make a different plan, because it's just not working to point them to the school and say, go do junior high ministry. And so what I did is I took all our kids that summer and I divvied them up. And I gave, at first, 3 kids to each one of our leaders and said, you don't have to worry about the junior high school. I don't want you to worry about the junior high school. All I want you to do is worry about these 3 kids. And when they come to youth group, I want you to sit with them and laugh with them. I want you once a week to send them a card. This is back before email and text. I want you to send them a little card and just say, I am thinking about it. And if you notice they're gone at youth group, you write them a card or give them a phone call and tell them you missed them. And take them out once a month. Take them bowling. Take them to the mall. Walk around. All you got to worry about is 3 kids. And during that next year, my 10 leaders, they had to deal with 3 kids. And then as the kids started getting attention, they started bringing their kids. It started growing. They had 4 kids. And eventually, all my leaders, I had to get more leaders. They had each of them 5, 6, 7 kids that they were working with. But it was bite size is the main thing to understand. It was bite size. It wasn't look at the junior high and make a difference. It was look at this kid and just love them and call them and write them a note and let them know they're important. And that's what I love most about compassion, is it's really just talking about taking a bite out of this global problem of poverty, just one child at a time. And so that's what I wanted to share with you, and why I wanted Peter and Michael to come down. I believe that this sort of thing is the best thing that we can do as believers, that it's not a burden, and I hope you never would hear it from me as a guilt trip or anything like that. I believe that being a part of changing a person's life for good is the single greatest joy that God gives us in life. It's better than anything you can own and anything you can do, is bringing a person to a better life. And compassion provides one of the simplest, most set up ways imaginable for each of us in the United States to touch one child, just one, and make a difference in their lives. And I felt this would be good for us. And that's why I'm bringing it to you. It's not coming from the missions department of the church, because I don't want it to be part of missions. I want it to be part of your mission. Each of us should have a mission. It's not part of the missions that the church does. It's the mission I'm doing. Linda and I are doing a mission to little Delmy and her family. That's our mission in El Salvador. It's bite-sized. It's manageable, it's affordable, and it's fun. And that's why we wanted to bring these guys to this church. So I thank you for coming. Let me pray, and we're going to sing. Let's worship and sing. And Lord Jesus, I pray your blessing on us. I thank you for Peter being here, for Michael being here. I thank you again for Delmy and her family, and for all the little children in El Salvador and around the world. And I thank you for the ministry of compassion. Lord, I pray broadly for the 1.5 million children that have notebooks and that people are caring for them. Lord, lavish them with your goodness. Break the cycle of poverty and bring good to these little ones one at a time, Lord. And thank you that we can be a part of it. In Jesus' great name, amen.